6 envelopes that had arrived across 14 months, each one thicker than it needed to be for what it was saying, each one dressed up in professional language that was just another way of saying the same thing. No. Marcus Webb had them in a drawer in the kitchen, not to punish himself, not because he was sentimental about failure. He kept them because he'd promised himself he'd read every single one of them the day the workshop finally opened. That day was starting to feel like a door at the end of a hallway that kept getting longer. He was standing in the empty space now, the old Hendricks Hardware building on Birch Street in Millhaven, Tennessee, population 6,000 and falling, bare concrete floor, rafters that needed reinforcing, 2 roll-up bay doors that hadn't rolled up smoothly in years, 1,500 square feet that in his mind had already become something. A place where people brought the things they couldn't fix and left them fixed. A place where the word gave up didn't have to be the last word. He was 41 years old, and this building was everything he had left to try. His phone buzzed, text from his daughter Nadia. How'd it go today? He looked at the empty space, at the bare rafters, at the bay doors that needed work. Working on it, he typed back. He didn't mention the 6th letter. She'd worry. She was 17, and she worried about him with the focused, sustained anxiety of someone who'd been watching him fight too long and didn't know how to stop watching. What nobody outside that kitchen drawer knew, what even Nadia didn't fully understand, was that Marcus Webb had one more call to make. And the person he was calling had last walked into his life 8 years ago. Stay with me to the end. Hit like and drop your city in the comments. Let's see where this story reaches. Millhaven sat in the crease between 2 ridges in eastern Tennessee, the kind of town the highway had bypassed in 1987 and never looked back at. It had a Dollar General, a Subway, a diner called Paulette's that had been there since 1963 and would probably outlast the Ridge Line, and a main street that was more like a memory of a main street. It also had Marcus Webb's shop, or it had until 3 years ago. Webb's small engine repair had operated out of a converted gas station on Birch Street for 11 years. Lawn mowers, chainsaws, generators, the tillers people dragged out every spring and the pressure washers they misused every summer. Marcus had fixed them all. Had fixed them better than the manufacturers intended, honestly, because he had the particular understanding of mechanical things that can't entirely be taught, the instinct for what something is supposed to sound like, and the patience to find out why it doesn't. He'd built that business customer by customer, repair by repair. No advertising budget, no website worth mentioning. Just word of mouth in a town where word of mouth still traveled like water through limestone, slow, thorough, and eventually everywhere. He'd employed 2 people, paid them fairly, kept regular hours, closed on Sundays so he could be present for Nadia. Then the building had sold out from under him. The new owner, a man from Nashville who'd bought 4 properties in Millhaven as investment footprints, whatever that meant, had tripled the rent in one conversation and said he expected Marcus's answer by end of week. Marcus had given him his answer, and then he'd spent 3 years trying to find a building he could own. 6 banks, 14 months. The first 3 had been the regional ones, people he'd shaken hands with. He'd walked in with his business records, 11 years of them, neat, consistent, every number where it should be. Cash flow positive every year but the second one, when Nadia's mother had gotten sick and medical bills had pulled everything sideways. He had the explanation ready. He was prepared. First bank, debt-to-income concern. He didn't have enough personal collateral to offset the loan risk. Second bank, business revenue wasn't sufficient for the loan amount. The loan amount was $180,000. His revenue had averaged $92,000 annually for the last 5 years. The math, they explained, didn't quite work. Third bank, they'd need a co-signer, and did he have anyone who could speak to his creditworthiness? He thought about his mother in Knoxville, retired on a teacher's pension. He said no, he didn't. The fourth was a credit union and went better for longer. The loan officer was a woman named Patricia who actually read his records before their meeting and asked real questions. She'd called him 3 weeks after the application. She'd said she was sorry. The committee had concerns about market viability. A small engine repair shop in a town with declining population. She'd said it with genuine regret. It was still no. 5 and 6 came from small business loan programs, state and federal. The state program had an income floor he didn't quite meet. The federal one had a paperwork requirement that kept producing new paperwork requirements, like a hydra, until he was 18 months deep, and the answer had shifted from pending to not approved. He'd read every letter carefully, understood every reason. None of the reasons were malicious. They were just reasons, just the system doing what systems do, applying general rules to specific situations and producing outcomes that made sense in aggregate and broke hearts in the particular. He'd folded each letter once and put it in the drawer. And then he'd sat down at the kitchen table and looked at his daughter's school picture that was magneted to the refrigerator, her junior year photo, the one where she was trying not to smile too hard but failing, and he'd thought about what he was going to do next. That was when he'd remembered Eleanor Marsh. Eleanor Marsh had brought in a Husqvarna riding mower in the spring of 2016. She'd been 68 then, wide through the shoulders, with white hair she didn't bother styling and hands that looked like they'd worked for decades. She'd driven a truck older than Marcus's truck, and she'd gotten it out of the bed herself before he'd had a chance to offer help. "Carburetor, I think," she'd said. "Been sputtering since April." It hadn't been the carburetor. It had been a cracked primer bulb and a partially blocked fuel line that the carburetor issue was masking. Marcus had found it in 40 minutes, fixed it in an hour, and charged her for the actual work rather than the diagnosis. She'd looked at the invoice. "You didn't charge me for the diagnostic," she'd said. "I charge for fixing, not for looking." She'd studied him for a moment. "Where'd you train?" "My grandfather. He had a shop like this outside Maryville." "He have a name?" "Luther Webb." Eleanor had been quiet for a moment. Then she'd said, "Luther Webb fixed my father's combine in 1961. Emergency repair, harvest time, refused to be paid." Marcus hadn't known what to say to that. "Said it was a neighbor obligation," Eleanor had continued. "That neighbors didn't invoice each other for important things." She'd paid him for the mower. She'd come back every spring after that. The Husqvarna, a gas trimmer that needed annual maintenance. One summer, a generator that had sat too long and needed significant work. She always paid in cash, always on time, always refused the senior discount he tried to offer. She said discounts were condescending. He liked her quite a bit. The last time he'd seen her had been 2 weeks before the building sold. She'd brought in the mower for its spring service, and he'd told her what was happening, because she always asked about the business, and he'd gotten used to answering her honestly. She'd listened without interrupting. "What are you going to do?" she'd said. "Find another building." "Good," she'd said, like that settled it. He hadn't heard from her in 3 years. He found her number in his old customer file. He still had all of them, a binder in the filing cabinet, every customer he'd ever served, and he stared at it for 2 days before he called. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus Webb," she said, like she'd been expecting it. "Mrs. Marsh." He always called her Mrs. Marsh, even though she'd told him twice to use a leaner, some habits. "How far along are you?" she said. He blinked. "I'm sorry. How far along with the building, the Hendricks building on Birch? I heard you were working on it." Millhaven, population 6,000, of course she'd heard. "I have access to it," he said. "Conditional lease with option to buy, but I can't get financing." He said it plainly. He'd gotten very good at saying it plainly. 6 banks. 14 months. A pause. "Come see me," Eleanor said. "Saturday morning, you know the Marsh place?" Everyone in Millhaven knew the Marsh place. Old farm off County Road 7, been in that family since before the Civil War, the kind of property that showed up in local history books. "I'll be there at 9 if that's all right," he said. "Bring Nadia if she wants to come." He almost said Nadia would be at volleyball practice, which was true, and then he realized that Eleanor Marsh had just told him, without saying it, that she knew more about his situation than a customer who hadn't seen him in 3 years had any reason to know. "I'll see you Saturday," he said. He didn't sleep well Friday night. Not from anxiety, exactly. Something more like the particular tension of a thing that might be about to change. A compressed feeling. He made coffee at 5:30, sat at the kitchen table. The 6 letters were in the drawer to his left. He didn't open it. He thought about his grandfather, Luther Webb, who'd fixed a combine during harvest time and refused payment because it was a neighbor obligation. Luther had run his shop for 38 years, fixed everything from outboard motors to industrial compressors, and known the name of every customer and half their grandchildren. He died at 77 with strong hands and a clean conscience and a shop that had to close because there was no one to take it over. His sons had moved away, had other lives, hadn't inherited the thing that Luther had, whatever it was. Marcus had inherited it. Skipped a generation, landed in his hands, manifested as an ability to listen to engines and hear what they were trying to say. He'd always thought of it as a gift he was obligated to put to use. The drawer sat to his left. He didn't open it. The Marsh farm was 320 acres of ridge and bottomland, and it showed. The driveway was a mile of good gravel. The fences were maintained with the care of someone who took infrastructure seriously. The farmhouse itself was a 2-story with a porch that wrapped 3 sides, the kind of porch that communicated something about how the people inside felt about the world, like they wanted to look at it, like it was worth sitting with. Eleanor was on the porch when he pulled up. She looked the same, maybe more so if that was possible. She seemed more settled into herself, like time had pressed her into a more definitive shape. She was carrying a coffee mug and not offering to share it, which was fine. "You look tired," she said as he came up the steps. I didn't sleep well. Come inside. The interior of the farmhouse was what Marcus had expected and more. Rooms that had been used for 150 years and felt it not neglected, just inhabited, genuinely lived in. Photographs spanning generations, books stacked on actual tables rather than decoratively shelved, a kitchen that smelled like coffee and something baking. They sat at the kitchen table. Tell me the whole thing, Alina said. From the building selling to now. He told her all of it. The rent tripling, the search for alternative space, the discovery of the Hendricks building, the conditional lease. The 6 applications, the reasons each one failed, the exact numbers. He had a way of telling it without self-pity, laying facts out the way you laid out a repair estimate, item by item, what it was and what it would take. Alina listened without expression. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. The Hendricks building, she said. How much? The option to buy is $190,000. I need $80,000 down to get the purchase mortgage at a rate I can service on projected revenue. That's what I went to the banks for. And your projected revenue. I have documentation, 5-year business history, market analysis, projected customer base recovery. He'd brought a folder. He set it on the table. The 4th bank, Patricia at Millhaven Credit Union, she said the numbers were actually solid. The issue was population decline and market viability perception. Alina opened the folder. She read with the same patient attention she'd always brought to invoices, to explanations, to everything. She turned pages without rushing. Marcus drank his coffee. Outside the kitchen window, the farm spread toward the ridge line, October brown and still, the kind of still that made you aware of how much noise the rest of life usually carried. Alina closed the folder. Your grandfather refused to charge my father for that repair, she said. You mentioned that. He said it was a neighbor obligation. She looked at Marcus steadily. Do you know what my father did after that? No. He brought Luther 3 cords of firewood that October and told everyone within 20 miles that Luther Webb was the most honest mechanic in 4 counties. Alina set her coffee mug down. Your grandfather's shop ran for 38 years on the reputation that story built. Marcus was quiet. I'm 80 now, Alina said. I have children who live in Nashville and Atlanta. I have grandchildren who visit at Christmas and forget to call in between. I have this farm, which has been in my family longer than any institution in this county, and I have assets that are currently returning less than they should because I don't want the complexity of managing them. She looked at him directly. I'd like to make you a loan. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. $80,000. $10 year term, 3% interest, payments quarterly. She pushed the folder back toward him. I've already had my attorney draft the paperwork. It's simple. If you default, I get a lien on the business equipment, nothing else. He looked at the folder at the farm outside the window. Mrs. Marsh, Alina. He tried it. It felt strange, but right. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask, she said. I'm telling you. She picked up her coffee mug. There's a difference. He sat with it for a moment, the weight of it, the specific gravity of something you'd been carrying a long time suddenly being set down, or at least being held by a second pair of hands. Why? He said. Alina considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. Your grandfather fixed my father's combine and refused payment because he thought it was the right thing to do, she said. It was the right thing to do, but it also cost him a day's work and parts he couldn't fully recover. She paused. I've been thinking about that debt for a long time, not a debt exactly, more like an imbalance, something that wanted correcting. She looked at him. And I've watched you work for 8 years. I've seen what you do with what people bring you, the care, the honesty. A pause. Millhaven needs that shop, Marcus. We lose it again, and there's nowhere within 30 miles that does what you do. The banks didn't think it was viable. The banks think in spreadsheets. Her voice was dry. I think in communities. Different calculation. The paperwork took 2 weeks. Alina's attorney was a woman named Susan Holt who went through everything with the focused efficiency of someone who'd done exactly this kind of thing before and respected everyone's time. 3 meetings, clean documents, no complications. Marcus had his own attorney look at it. A man named Garrett in Knoxville who charged reasonable rates and said what he actually thought, which was that the terms were extraordinarily fair and that Marcus should say yes and not overthink it. He said yes. He called Nadia from the parking lot outside Garrett's office. She was at volleyball practice, but she picked up because she always picked up for him. I got the loan, he said. Silence. Then Dad. Yeah. Oh, my Dad. She made a sound that was half laugh, half something else. Seriously. For the building. For the building. Who? Which bank finally? Not a bank, he said. Alina Marsh. Another silence. The mower lady, Nadia said. She prefers Alina. Nadia laughed. A real one, the kind she didn't bother performing, just the actual sound of her being genuinely happy. He hadn't heard that laugh pointed in his direction in a while. Dad, she said, we're getting that building. We're getting that building. I'm telling everyone. Nadia, I'm literally telling everyone. Do not try to stop me. He didn't try to stop her. The renovations took 11 weeks. Marcus did most of the work himself on evenings and weekends, with Nadia helping when she wasn't in school or at practice. He reinforced the rafters. He replaced the roll-up door mechanisms. He poured a new section of floor in the northwest corner where moisture had gotten under the old slab. He had help. That was the thing he hadn't expected. Dale Ockaffer, who ran the hardware store, showed up one Saturday with 2 of his sons and spent the day helping with the rafter work. Said he wanted a good shop in town as much as anyone. Said it like it was obvious. Paulette herself, 73, still running the diner, the kind of woman who'd outlasted everything, brought food twice. Said she figured people working this hard needed feeding. Said nothing else, which was somehow sufficient. Patricia from Millhaven Credit Union stopped by in her personal capacity, not the bank's, she clarified pointedly, and said she was sorry about the application and she hoped things worked out. Marcus told her it was working out fine. She looked at the space, at the progress, and she smiled. 6 weeks in, a leaner came. She drove her old truck, got out herself before Marcus could offer assistance, which he was learning was just how she operated. Walked around the space with her hands in her jacket pockets and her eyes moving carefully over everything. She stood under the reinforced rafters and looked up. Luther would have liked this, she said. Marcus, holding a drill, looked at her. He always said a good shop needed good bones, she said, and to stop trying to make things look like something they weren't. She looked at the bare concrete and the clean rafters and the bay doors that now worked. This is honest. Working on it, he said. She stayed for 2 hours, mostly quiet, not intrusively so, the way certain people knew how to be present in a space without filling it up. Before she left, she stopped at the door. What are you calling it? He'd been thinking about that, had gone back and forth between practical names, descriptive names, the name of his grandfather, the name of the street. Webb's, he said. Same as before. Alina nodded slowly. Your grandfather would have said the same thing, she said. Webb's small engine repair reopened on the 2nd Saturday of November. Marcus had put one sign in the window and said nothing else publicly. He hadn't sent announcements, hadn't paid for advertising. He trusted what had always worked. By 10 in the morning, there were 4 machines in the queue. By 2, there were 9. Dale Ockaffer brought a pressure washer that had been broken for a year. He'd been getting by without it, which for a hardware store owner was a particular kind of stubborn suffering. Marcus had it running in 90 minutes. A man named Terrence drove in from 14 miles out with a generator that 3 other people had told him was a lost cause. Marcus found the problem in 20 minutes. It was a lost cause in the same way that most lost causes were. It just needed someone to look at it honestly. Nadia came at noon with lunch. She stood at the door of the bay with 2 sandwiches and looked at the shop. Dad, she said. Yeah, it's real. It's real. She handed him a sandwich. They ate standing at the bay door, looking out at Birch Street and the town that had been small and was still small and would probably always be small and was his completely. I've been thinking, Nadia said. That's generally good. I want to learn, she said. Small engines, the actual work. She glanced at him sidelong. I know you said I should focus on school. I said you should focus on school and also learn whatever you want. Did you? I'm saying it now, she smiled. Not the performed smile, the real one. Okay, she said. Teach me. Starting Monday, he said. Why Monday? He looked out at the street, at the town that didn't look like much from the outside, that had been bypassed by the highway and overlooked by every metric anyone used to measure the value of places. Because today, he said, I have 9 machines. Alina came back on the 3rd day. She had the Husqvarna, spring tune-up, she said, though it was November, she liked to stay ahead of it. She said it in the queue like it was 2016, like nothing had changed and everything had. Marcus found her in the waiting area when he came to check. 2 folding chairs and a small table with a coffee maker, nothing fancy, and she was reading something on her phone with the slightly skeptical expression she had when technology was performing acceptably, but she wasn't giving it credit. Running already, she said without looking up. 9 the first day, 12 yesterday. Word travels. It always did. She looked up from her phone. The 4th bank, Patricia, he nodded. She came to see me, Alina said. After she heard about the loan, she wanted to apologize in person, said the committee had made the wrong call. She doesn't have to apologize. I know, she thought she did. Alina looked at him. She asked me what I saw in the numbers that the committee missed. What did you tell her? I told her I didn't read the numbers. She set down her phone. I read the man. He didn't know what to say to that. Banks read spreadsheets, Alina said, which she'd said before, but this time it had a finish to it. And that's fine, spreadsheets matter. But a spreadsheet can tell you revenue and can't tell you character, and character is what runs a business past the first 5 years. She looked at the bay, at the machines queued up in there at the clean-boned, honest space. You have character, Marcus. Your grandfather had it. It doesn't show up in debt-to-income ratios. He wanted to say something adequate. He couldn't find anything adequate. Go fix my mower, she said. He went and fixed her mower. By December, the queue had a 2-week wait time. By January, he'd brought back one of the employees he'd had at the old shop, a young man named Dewey who had the gift, who could listen to engines the same way Marcus could, who had been working at a big box hardware store an hour away since Webb's closed and came back with the look of someone returning from a long and unnecessary trip. By February, he'd started teaching Nadia on Sunday mornings. She was fast. Methodical in a way he hadn't expected, she asked questions before she started things, mapped the whole problem before she touched anything. His grandfather had done that. He'd told her that. She'd said, "Tell me more about him." So he told her. About Luther Webb, who'd fixed a combine during harvest time and refused payment, who'd run a shop for 38 years and known everyone's names and raised a family on honest work and left a reputation that had outlasted him by decades. Nadia listened with the focused attention she brought to things that mattered. "He never got to see your shop," she said when he finished. "No, but it's kind of like," she stopped, looking for the word. "Like he built the thing that built the thing, you know?" He did know. In March, Alina came for her quarterly visit with the trimmer. She stayed longer than usual. Sat in the waiting area with her coffee and watched the bay work, Marcus and Dewey and Nadia, each with a machine, each in the particular concentrated stillness of people doing something they understood. When Nadia finished her repair, a chainsaw that had needed a new chain brake assembly and a carburetor adjustment, not a beginner job, Alina watched her explain the work to the customer. Patient, clear, not oversimplifying. Afterward, Alina gestured Nadia over. "You're good," she said. Nadia tried not to show that this meant something, didn't succeed entirely. "I'm learning," she said. "You're good," Alina repeated, like the distinction mattered. "Different thing from learning. Learning happens everywhere. Good is particular." Nadia glanced at Marcus. He kept working. "Thank you," she said to Alina, "for the loan, for everything." Alina looked at her for a moment. "Your great-great-grandfather got his harvest in because a man on the next road thought it was a neighbor obligation," she said. "I'm just moving the thing along." Nadia thought about that. "I'll move it along too," she said. "Someday." Alina studied her, satisfied. "I know you will," she said. The 6 rejection letters were still in the drawer. Marcus read them on the morning of the first anniversary of the shop opening. He'd promised himself he would. He made coffee, sat at the kitchen table. Opened the drawer, he read all 6. They were as courteous as he remembered, as reasonable. Each one containing real reasons, real concerns, real assessments that had come from real people trying to apply consistent standards to inconsistent situations. None of them were malicious. None of them were dishonest. They were just wrong about this particular thing. He folded them back up, put them back in the drawer. Then he got in his truck and drove to Birch Street and unlocked the bay doors and let the morning light into the shop that was his, that had always been going to be his, that just needed time and a neighbor's obligation to become real. Dewey was already there, which was usual. Coffee made, first machine in the queue, the small, competent preparations of someone who took his work seriously. Nadia came at noon. Business was steady, had been steady for 12 months. Not spectacular, nothing about Millhaven was spectacular, but solid and sustained and growing by small increments in the way that real things grew. He was on year 2 of a 10-year loan at 3%. He was going to make it. He'd known that for a while, but today he let himself know it completely. Let the knowledge settle in fully without protecting himself against it. He was going to make it. At 3 o'clock, Alina's truck came down Birch Street. She parked, got out. Came in through the bay door with her hands in her jacket pockets. "Nothing wrong with the mower," she said. "Just passing through." "Come in," Marcus said. She sat in one of the folding chairs with a coffee, watched the work. After a while, she said, "Your grandfather came by places sometimes for no reason." Marcus kept working. "Just to be present," she said. "Just to be in the room with people doing work they cared about." She looked at the machines in the queue. "He said it was good for the soul." Marcus looked up. "He was right about most things," Marcus said. "He was." Alina sipped her coffee. "He'd be pleased with this." He didn't say anything, didn't need to. Some things were just true and didn't require a response. He went back to work. The bay doors were open. The afternoon light came in clean and level across the floor. The town was outside, going about its business. 6,000 people, and a falling number, but his people, his town, his particular corner of the world. Inside the bay, the smell of metal and oil and the particular honest dust of things being repaired. Outside, October coming, the ridges going gold on either side of the valley. In the drawer at home, 6 letters he was done being afraid of. In the shop, work that would be there tomorrow and the day after and the year after. And across the room, a woman in her 80s drinking bad coffee in a folding chair, watching the work with the satisfaction of someone who'd seen a long story come around right. They didn't need to say anything about it. It was just there. It was enough. It was everything.